If you get the feeling that all those workplace fairness initiatives are just a bit of lip service, you know, heaps of training sessions, but the real rules never seem to budge. Well, there's this brilliant book by Harvard's Iris Bonet and Siri Chilazzi called Make Work Fair, and it takes a completely different tack. It's a hands-on, evidence-based guide to creating workplaces where everyone can genuinely thrive. So, let's dive in. This right here, this is the main idea of the whole book. For ages, the focus has been on trying to fix people. You know, telling them to lean in more, negotiate tougher, just be more confident. But the authors reckon that totally misses the point. The real issue isn't the players, it's the field they're being made to play on. And to really drive this home, they use this cracking analogy. So imagine two sprinters lining up for a 100-metre race. Sprinter A gets to start right on the official starting line, but Sprinter B has to start a whole 20 metres behind. Now, most of our usual diversity efforts are like giving Sprinter B better running shoes or a flash new coach. Sure, it might help a bit, but obviously not enough, right? It doesn't matter how good their shoes are, they're still starting 20 metres behind everyone else. The only real way to fix the race is to move the starting line so everyone starts from the same spot. So the big question is, how do we actually do that in a real workplace? And that brings us to the main solution in the book. This really powerful idea called behavioural design. The whole idea is that instead of trying to change people's deeply held beliefs, which is nearly impossible, we can change the systems and processes that shape our everyday behaviour. What's really important here is that phrase, inherently biased brains. Look, the book acknowledges that we all have mental shortcuts and unconscious biases. It's just the way we're wired to get through a complicated world. Behavioural design doesn't try to magically get rid of that wiring. Instead, it just builds a smarter, fairer system around it. And honestly, this is such a massive shift. It means we can move away from things like unconscious bias training, which, to be honest, study after study shows has very little lasting impact on what people actually do. You just can't lecture bias out of someone. So this is the alternative. It's about making fairness the easy option, the default setting. It's about designing a workplace where doing the fair thing is just the most natural thing to do. So how do we start building this better system? Well, that's where the toolkit comes in. So what does this actually look like day to day? Well, the book lays out this amazing toolkit with super practical, actionable things you can do. We're going to look at 3 of the biggest ones: using data, setting targets, and creating the right incentives. Our first tool is data, and this number represents one of the best examples out there, the BBC's 50/50 project. It was actually started by a journalist, Ros Atkins, who just wanted to know the real score for his own news program. See, he and his team, they thought they were doing a pretty good job with representation, but they didn't really have the numbers to prove it. So they just started counting. And that simple act of collecting data made an invisible problem suddenly impossible to ignore. It wasn't about blaming anyone, it was just about holding up a mirror. And once they saw that imbalance, the motivation to fix it just happened naturally. That's the power of data. Okay, so once you can see the problem, the very next step is deciding where you want to go. And this is where setting clear, ambitious targets becomes absolutely essential. A fantastic example of this is the 30% Club. Just look at these numbers. Back in 2011, women held a pretty dismal 12.5% of board seats in the UK's top companies, so the 30% Club set this voluntary public goal to get that number to 30%. A lot of people thought, no way. But as you can see, by 2020, they hadn't just met the goal, they completely smashed right past it. It just goes to show, what gets measured and what gets a target gets done. The third tool in the kit is all about shaping behaviour by changing what gets rewarded. Incentives are these powerful little nudges that can make fairness a core part of how you do business, instead of just some nice-to-have thing you talk about once a year. And the Massport model is a perfect case study of this. So they have this huge piece of land to develop in Boston, and they didn't just ask developers to submit diverse bids. No, they made diversity, equity, and inclusion worth a quarter of the entire score for winning the project. What happened? All of a sudden, developers who usually just stuck to their old boys club had a huge financial reason to build diverse teams. It totally changed the rules of the game, and because of that, it changed the outcome. Okay, so we've got the tools, data, targets, incentives. Now, let's look at how we can use them to redesign the key moments in someone's career. This is where the theory gets super practical, especially for industries like the skilled trades, where even tiny, seemingly harmless barriers can have a massive, massive impact. You have to see this. The New York City Fire Department wanted to attract more diverse candidates. They found one little barrier in their way, a $30 exam fee, so they got rid of it. The result? An absolutely mind-blowing 83% jump in female applicants and an 84% jump in black applicants. It wasn't a lack of interest holding people back. It was a tiny $30 hurdle. Just think about the potential impact of removing small barriers like that to get more women into trades right here in Australia. Oh, this is one of my favourite examples in the whole book. So a brewery in Colombia had a law that said women couldn't lift more than a certain weight. The old lazy solution was simple. Just don't hire women for those jobs. But they took a behavioural design approach. They didn't try to change the law or the women. They redesigned the work itself. They re-engineered the production line, and by doing that, they made the job accessible to a much, much wider range of people. They changed the work, not the worker. Get this, even something as simple as a rating scale can be a hidden barrier. Research found that on a 10-point performance scale, men were 50% more likely to get the top score. Why? Well, because culturally, we associated 10 with perfection, and stereotypes can make it harder for managers to see women as perfect. But when they redesigned the system to a 6-point scale, where a 6 just meant impressive performance, the gender gap completely disappeared. A simple, brilliant design fix. So when you put all these individual fixes together, the data, the targets, the redesigned processes, they're all building towards one big ultimate goal. And that goal is to create a culture where fairness isn't some special initiative we talk about. It's just normal. It's just how we do things around here. This quote comes from a law firm that really managed to embed fairness into its DNA. And that spirit, that idea of collective responsibility, that making work fair is good for everyone, that's exactly what groups like Tradeswomen Australia are fighting for. It's about creating an environment where every single person can show up and contribute their absolute best work, which is good for the whole industry and for a whole economy. So if you remember nothing else, remember these 4 things. 1, stop trying to fix people and start fixing your systems. 2, use simple data to actually see what's going on. 3, set clear, ambitious goals to push for real action. And 4, hunt for those tiny, seemingly insignificant hurdles, like a $30 fee or a rating scale, and redesign them to make fairness the default. And that leaves us with a final question for you to take away. This doesn't have to be some massive overhaul. Just think about your team meetings or your hiring checklists, how projects get handed out, or even how feedback is given. What's one small, concrete process you could tweak, maybe even tomorrow, to help move that starting line just a little bit closer for everyone?